Today, I'm going to make it so you also can only notice that little light shining on my bald head. The way I operate is not to say or do anything when these kinds of things are done to me. I do not strike back with more hurtful comments or behavior. That just makes the hole deeper. I pack it away, I log it. When the hurtful behavior becomes too much to bear, I confront the situation and hold people accountable for the truth. Of course, at that point it is always denied, but I know the truth and stick to it. Perhaps people should not try to pull such tactics on a person that knows their angles. It's easy. You tell lies about people and you slam their name to all that will listen, disrespect them in any way you can, then throw up your hands when they confront you and act like they must have misunderstood you somehow. The guilt trip used to work well. Getting over that angle was a load off my soul. It was used like a weapon on me my whole life for any situation I was in. In effect, I learned the game from start to finish. I found this behavior is not only confined to my mother and father. It's shared by a great majority of the human race. My childhood family grew proficient at manipulation. Though it may still work on some people, it must be difficult to live with. I always felt that when a person does a bad deed, no matter how much they convince themselves they're innocent, they know exactly who they are and what their true situation is when they lay their heads to sleep at night. Before I left the second time, I gave it a solid chance. I did not want to leave knowing that I didn't try all that I could, partly because I knew that any negativity on my part would be used against me. I was very careful, as I am now, to be totally level-headed and accurate and truthful. It helps all the situations I'm in. I attempted to communicate to my mother once again that I was tired of my father's attitude and I needed some time to work things out, some time to grow, muster my confidence, and come at my life from a different angle. I really did not have a problem with my mother at that point, but the way she responded to my requests about my father and acting out so dramatically really hurt the situation. It was met by crying hysterics and denial. Since my request was met with much resistance from my mother, and I could only imagine the reaction I could get from my father, I decided to end it for good with both parties because I was being shown that my needs were not going to be met. It was being made very clear. Keep in mind that I was beginning to experience psychological problems due to stress such as high anxiety, depression, paranoia. It was a necessary move in order to retain what I had left of my sanity to retrieve my mental health. I was noticing more psychological issues over time. For example, my inner monologue used to be the voice of my father, yelling at the top of his lungs in an intimidating voice. Imagine thinking of something mundane such as a math problem. When it's recited in my mind, that's the voice I used to get, not my own. It's not pretty, but what I've gone through due to the adversity I've experienced. Whether you like it or not, these were antagonistic actions that caused me to leave. It was a self-protection mechanism that was necessary to preserve my mind, and by thinking of themselves and their needs alone. They failed me by thinking of themselves and their needs alone. I am a flexible guy, as everyone knows. I will do anything for people if they show me respect, and even when they do not most of the time. I realize the relationships are give and take. It is evident that I was giving and not receiving when I asked nicely. If it's still not clear why I left the second time, read the next part carefully. My father has always spoken to me as if I was an idiot and a failure. It's the same way he's spoken to me my entire life. This behavior was moving on to my son. Recently, my father berated my son about cleaning their pool. I saw that Dad was up to his old hard-knock lessons, the same way he taught me every important lesson in my life. Lure me into a situation that should be healthy and fun, and then act as if I'm stupid and never going to amount to anything, so don't even try. I would still have to stand there and take his intimidation, sneering, and rudeness for his own personal enjoyment, so he can feel powerful because he in fact feels inferior in his mind. It's easy and written all over him wherever he goes. Unfortunately, there was no apology explanation that followed. This behavior did not occur on occasion, which could possibly be understood. It was literally every time he had interpersonal interaction. What does a parent do or a person do when someone speaks rudely to their son? My father seemed to skip over all these points, especially ones that involve sensitivity. So that was my father in a nutshell there. I'm just going to work my way backward here because I think that actually works better. Just lessons that my father taught. That was the big thing there. So don't, lure me into a situation, healthy and fun. Like, I don't know, healthy and fun. It could be anything. Normally, it was lessons that a father could teach his son. I would always say that's what he did. And the first one I ever remembered was me tying my shoes. I'm sure I mentioned it somewhere in what I do here. I was like, literally, I don't even think I was 5. I might have been 4. And I remember being in the foyer with him, and he couldn't believe that I couldn't tie my shoe yet. And he was like kind of bitching about my mom. I really, like not showing me. That's what he always did. And then he was like calling me a dumb fuck and stuff when I was like 4. So that really continued for the rest of my life. That was the thing. My mother never did that kind of stuff. She never would. Dad called me a dumb fuck, but she sure acted like it. Yeah. So that was Dad. Very insensitive fellow. Very insensitive. But the pool thing, where it had moved on to my son, that was just a big problem. My son was, I don't know, he might have been like 8 or 10. It was his birthday or something, and Mom and Dad had a pool, and they watched him and stuff, and they got along most of the time. But that was the thing about my father. We all got along most of the time. I mean, it seemed a way on the outside, and then he'd just be a dick. And once I heard that, I think my son told me about it. And then I was like, okay, I know what he did. And then I put myself in my son's shoes, and then I was like, okay, I remember what my dad used to do. Sneering, intimidation, and rudeness. I don't know if you guys had fathers like that, but it fucking sucks, especially for guys, because it's like, I want to learn a lesson here, but that dad's just out to feel better by hurting someone, by hurting a child. I've seen him do it. I've had him do it to me. I've never done it. Maybe other people don't understand it, but I did see it in my life. Self-protection mechanisms I speak of, these were, all about relationships being give and take. I always really went on that with my parents as the main idea. It never was that give and take thing. And I think you all probably experienced too. That's funny that we all experience it, because you think there'd be a cross-section of assholes out there that would just give the rest of us trouble. But just those little things about relationships where they get, people might not realize, or people trip up over their, emotions, and you get leeway, and they're very complicated things, but everybody's been in a situation like this. But I do take for granted that some people don't understand what it would like to be around my father, because he was a mean person. If I were to say, somebody that hated people, that was my father. So once again, already I've talked at least twice, probably 3 times, about me being estranged from them and leaving them. I never left them for a long time. I stayed. Say my sister would leave them. She kept leaving. She went on the 6-month cycle, and I never left. And then this was when I started, and then I went back once again, and Mom got belligerent with me. Every time I asked her about Dad, or threatened the situation. I wouldn't even be threatening the situation. I'd be like, Mom, can we take care of Dad or whatever? Can we do something? And she'd just get belligerent. She would think that I was going right to being leaving, which I'd never done that. She was like, maybe a separation thing my mother had. I'm not sure. Psychologically, it was definitely a problem, but I'd never threaten her with leaving. I would just say, hey, let's do something. But she would know the situation was bad, and she would realize that could be something that happened. Always gave it a chance, and always tried to honor it. And I gave them full access to my son. He stayed over there. They built that pool because of him. They really just weren't people that you could get along with. It really just cannot navigate a situation with my mother or my father. So hopefully you guys do not have to worry about that with people, and you have parents or kids that you can get along with.